I am an entertainer that can give some basic advice. Nothing more and nothing less. I don't want to be referred to as some sort of expert or some sort of idiot that hates on art and doesn't give commentary with actual substance. So throughout my Browsing DeviantArt series, I have tried to both entertain and give some advice. But because I seek to entertain thousands of people, I sometimes have to value jokes over constructive criticism. Because let's be honest, an entire series devoted to nothing but emotionless critique over thousands of pieces of art I can imagine would be very boring for you guys, and a very tedious journey for me as a content creator. But in this episode, I would like to highlight some mistakes that I often see in art. Things that have always bothered me, and I've always wanted to talk about. And when I show these people in my videos, I am not trying to shame them as beginners or call them out. I am simply using them as examples. And again, I am not an expert, so these aren't going to be in-depth investigations over subtle art techniques. This is more of a video listing basic mistakes and habits that I think artists should avoid. The first thing I would like to discuss is shading, and when and where to put it. I would first like to note how this person puts shading underneath the collar, and then there's a bit of light, and then more shading. You see, in the natural world, this makes no sense, and while their shading technique is good, their placement is still lacking. The most important thing, in my opinion, that you need to know when shading is where the light source is coming from, so that you can shade according to that light source and not just guess. As you can see in a later piece of artwork made by the same artist, you can tell they have a better grasp on where the light source is. Now for this piece, I would first like to say that the detail and coloring is excellent. The one thing that I see as a problem, however, is the posture of the character. As you can see, it appears as though she is leaning to the side, but her legs are pointing inward, which makes the posture overall just a bit awkward. I've experienced this problem myself when drawing, and what I believe happens is that when drawing the character, artists sometimes unwittingly draw the character leaning. And I think the easiest way to solve this is by using a reference to draw alongside it. Maybe a simple straight line will do. A more common mistake I often see is when people try to draw hair on a cartoonish character like individual strands. When artists do this, it often takes more time and always has an awkward looking result. You see, when you have a cartoonish and plain surface contrasting with a large mass of detail, it makes the piece overall just look kind of strange. If you are, however, making a very realistic and detailed picture, this is a bit more appropriate. But if you are making something like this with a plain surface, it doesn't work as well. The easiest solution to this is of course to make the surface and texture of the hair match the character. For example, in this character, you will notice that the hair does not consist of individual strands, but a carefully shaped set of only a few lines, which gives the illusion of a full head of hair. Now for this piece, the cat figures in the front are not going to be the focus. The one thing that really stood out to me as a distraction was the tree roots in the background. Now when it comes to the roots of trees, there are many various ways to draw them, but I can tell you that this is definitely not a proper way. I would like to note that the tree roots in this piece are too far apart, too similar in distance from each other, and much too small compared to the width of the actual tree. As you will notice, in most trees, the roots appear almost squished together, and correlate well with the width of the trunk. A common solution to this is again to use a reference. Now, while the lighting and shading for this piece is quite good, the one thing that bothers me is the size of the eyes. I've noticed this in a lot of pieces, where artists tend to make the eyes ridiculously big compared to the body. And while big eyes are not really a mistake, in my opinion, when it comes to pictures like this, which aren't in an art style that favors large eyes and exaggeration, it looks kind of awkward. When you consider that the bodies, hair, and face all look proportional and slightly realistic, it's a bit odd to have eyes that contradict the overall tone of the picture and take up more than half of the face. Another common sight in art of characters is extremely tall bodies. I don't know exactly what the reason behind this is, but when your characters are so incredibly tall and thin, it looks a bit unnatural. An effect of this this is that you can't see a lot of the details on the face or other parts of the body because of how far you have to zoom out in order to even see the characters in full. My best advice is to at least shorten the characters or fix the proportions to make them appear a bit more natural. Now, while there are many flaws with this painting, such as the odd shape of the hair, the one thing that really sticks out to me is the inconsistency of the outlines. In some instances, the black lines are covered by color, and in others, they are very prominent. Before anything else, I feel like the line work should at least have some consistency throughout. Another common struggle with artists is of course proportions. As you can see in this piece, the proportions are a bit strange. In fact, it looks like the closer to the bottom of the body it gets, the smaller the anatomy of the body becomes, which would work if it were in a perspective that correlated with that. But this current perspective seems like we are looking at the character head on, which means the legs and torso should be close in size. A way to solve this is once again to use a reference. Now, when it comes to the placement of the eyes, one common thing I see in pieces like this is that the eyes are too close to the forehead, when in reality the forehead is much bigger than most people realize, which is something you should keep in mind. Necks are another thing in art that for some reason a lot of artists really seem to struggle with. I see problems with necks quite often, and one of the biggest mistakes is when people make the necks far too big for the actual body and head. In this piece, the neck is much larger than it should be, and for some reason the angles of the lines seem to move outward when it should be more parallel. The next common mistake is one of composition, specifically when textures don't match. In this piece, we have a cartoony digital figure stepping on rocks that look like they have been drawn on paper. If you are drawing with a certain texture, in this case more of a plain cartoonish one, then that texture should usually be carried out, of course with some variation, throughout the piece. For this piece, I need to say that while the line work, shading, and coloring are good, the placement of the hair is odd. I mean, this is what I imagine under the hair according to its placement on the head. This might also be a consequence of the position of the head, since the face is looking to the side, while the hair appears to be facing forward. And finally, when it comes to common mistakes, I believe this piece shows off one of the most prominent, when artists are messy with their drawings. Now of course, this is something that many people go through, and with a drawing program like Deviantart Miro, it's even more of a challenge. The thing that really sticks out to me when I look at this is the odd choice of colors and shading. For example, the white shading on the cheek is a strange choice, and the placement of shading doesn't correlate well with the light source. But according to a lot of this person's gallery, they have been improving a lot. The only thing they really need to work on is shading, coloring, and simply cleaning up stray line work. Anyway, my name is Solar Sands, this has been Browsing DeviantArt, and goodbye.